We welcome you to the fourth day of 1 week international seminar. So before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
Kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadam Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadam Shatrubuddhi vinashaya Deepajyotirnamostute Deepajyotirnamostute Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadam Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadam
Today, we'll be looking at various aspects of breastfeeding. In the past 3 days, we have been covering various topics like importance of breastfeeding and the role of breastfeeding in sustainable development and how breastfeeding contributes to the health and well-being of the child, and how breastfeeding fosters employment, employee engagement, and also we have seen what are the issues, challenges in breastfeeding. Today, we will also look at various other factors which are related to breastfeeding, and also the code which is binding on all the states, which is International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes. We'll resume in a minute. Let me pull out a video if possible. So the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, the member states of World Health Organization affirming the right of every child and every pregnant and lactating woman to be adequately nourished as a means of attaining and maintaining health, recognizing the infant malnutrition, which is a part of wider problems of lack of education, poverty, and social injustice, recognizing that the health of infants and young children cannot be isolated from the health of and nutrition of women, their socioeconomic status, and their roles as mothers, conscious that breastfeeding is an unequal way of providing ideal food for the healthy growth and development of infants, that it forms a unique biological and emotional basis for a health of mother and child, that the anti-infective properties of breast milk help to protect infants against disease, and that there is an important relationship between breastfeeding and child spacing, recognizing that the encouragement and protection of breastfeeding is an important part of health, nutrition, and other social measures required to promote healthy growth and development of infants and young children, and the breastfeeding is an important aspect of primary health care. So considering that when mothers do not breastfeed or only do partially, there is a legitimate market for infant formula and for suitable ingredients from which to prepare it, that all these products should accordingly be made accessible to those who need them through commercial or non-commercial distribution systems, and they should not be marketed or distributed in ways that may interfere with the protection and promotion of breastfeeding. So recognizing further that inappropriate feeding practices lead to infant malnutrition, morbidity, and mortality in all countries, that improper practices in the marketing of breast milk substitutes and related products can continue to these major public health problems. Convinced that it is important for infants to receive appropriate complementary foods, usually when the infant reaches 4 to 6 months of age, that every effort should be made to use locally available foods, and convinced nevertheless that such a complementary foods should not be used as breast milk substitutes. Appreciating that there are a number of social and economic factors affecting breastfeeding, and that accordingly government should develop social support systems to protect, facilitate, and encourage, and they should create an environment that fosters breastfeeding, provides appropriate family and community support, and protect mothers from factors that inhibit breastfeeding. Affirming that the healthcare systems and the healthcare professionals and other health workers serving in them have an essential role to play in guiding infant feeding practices, encouraging and facilitating breastfeeding, and providing objective and consistent advice to mothers and families about the superior value of breastfeeding or where needed on the proper use of infant formula, whether manufactured industrially or home prepared. Affirming further that the educational systems and other social services should be involved in the protection and promotion of breastfeeding and in appropriate use of complementary foods. Aware that families, communities, women organizations, and other non-governmental organizations have a special role to play in the protection and promotion of breastfeeding and in ensuring the support needed by pregnant women and mothers of infants and young children, whether breastfeeding or not. Affirming the need for governments, organizations of the United Nations systems, non-governmental organizations, experts in various related disciplines, consumer groups, and industry to cooperate in activities aimed at the improvement of maternal, infant, and young child health and nutrition. Recognizing that the government should undertake a variety of health and nutrition and other social measures to promote healthy growth and development of the infants and young children, that this code concerns only one aspect of these measures. Considering that manufacturers and distributors of the breast milk substitutes have an important constructive role to play to infant feeding and in the promotion of the aim of this code is proper implementation. Affirming that governments are called upon to take action appropriate to their social and legislative framework and their overall development objectives to give effect to the principles and aim of this code, including the enactment of legislation, regulations, are under suitable measures. Believing that in the light of the foregoing considerations and in the view of the vulnerability of infants in the early months of life, the risks involved in appropriate feeding practices, including unnecessary and improper use of breast milk substitutes, the marketing of breast milk substitutes requires special treatment, which makes usual marketing practices unsuitable for these products. Therefore, the member states agree the following articles which are recommended as a basis for action. Article 1, which is the aim of the code. The aim of the code is to contribute to the provision of safe, adequate nutrition for infants by the protection and promotion of breastfeeding and by ensuring the proper use of breast milk substitutes when they are necessary on the basis of adequate information and through appropriate marketing and distribution. Article 2 defines scope of the code. The code applies to the marketing and practices related thereto to the following products like breast milk substitutes, including infant formula, other milk products, food and beverages, including bottle-fed complementary foods, when marketed or otherwise represented to be suitable with or without modification for use as a partial or total replacement of breast milk, feeding bottles and teats. It also applies to their quality and availability and to the information concerning their use. So let's look at the Article 3, which provides the definitions. We'll not look into each and every aspect of the entire code. We will only just try to understand the core of the code so that we get an idea. So for the purpose of this code, breast milk substitute means any food being marketed or otherwise represented as a partial or total replacement for breast milk, whether or not suitable for that purpose. Complementary food means any food, whether manufactured or locally prepared, suitable for a complement to breast milk or to infant formula when either becomes insufficient to satisfy the nutritional requirements of the infant. Such food is also commonly known as weaning food or breast milk supplement or complementary food. Container means any form of packaging of products for sale as a normal retail unit, including wrappers. Distributor means a person, a corporation, or any other entity in the public or private sector engaged in the business, whether directly or indirectly, of marketing at the wholesale or retail level a product within the scope of this code. A primary distributor is a manufacturer's sales agent, representative, national distributor, or broker. Healthcare system means governmental, non-governmental, or private institutions or organizations engaged directly or indirectly in healthcare for mothers, infants, and pregnant women, and nurseries or childcare institutions. It also includes health workers in private practice. For the purposes of this code, the healthcare system does not include pharmacies or other established sales outlets. Health worker means a person working in a component of such a healthcare system, whether professional or non-professional, including voluntary unpaid workers. Infant formula means a breast milk substitute formulated industrially in accordance with applicable Codex Alimentarius standards to satisfy the normal nutritional requirements of infants up to between 4 and 6 months of age and adapted to their physiological characteristics. Infant formula may be prepared at home, in which it is described as home prepared. Label means any tag, brand, mark, pictorial, other descriptive matter written, printed, stenciled, marked, embossed, or impressed on or attached to a container or a wrapper of any products within the scope of this code. Manufacturer means a corporation or other entity in the public or private sector engaged in the business or function, whether directly or through an agent or through an entity controlled by or under the contract with it, of manufacturing a product within the scope of this code. Marketing means product promotion, distribution, selling, advertising, product public relations, and information services. Marketing personnel means any persons whose functions involve the marketing of a product or products coming within the scope of this code. Samples means single or small quantities of a product provided without any cost or free of cost. Supplies means quantities of a product provided for the use over an extended period, free or at a low price, or for social purpose, including those provided to families in need. So Article 4 talks about information and education. Government should have the responsibility to ensure that the objective and consistent information is provided to the infant on infant and young child feeding for use by families and those involved in the field of infant and young child nutrition. This responsibility should cover either the planning, provision, design, and dissemination of information of their control. Information and educational materials, whether written, audio, or visual, dealing with the feeding of infants and intended reach pregnant women and mothers of infants and young children should include clear information on all the following points: the benefits and superiority of breastfeeding, maternal nutrition and preparation for and maintenance of breastfeeding, the negative effect on breastfeeding of introducing partial bottle feeding, the difficulty of reversing the decision not to breastfeed, and wherever needed, the proper use of infant formula, whether manufactured industrially or home prepared. So when such materials contain information about the use of infant formula, They should include the social and financial implications of its use, the health hazards of inappropriate foods or feeding methods, and in particular, the health hazards of unnecessary or improper use of infant formula and other breast milk substitutes. Such materials should not use any pictures or text which may idealize the use of breast milk substitutes. Donations of informational or educational equipment or materials by manufacturers or distributors should not be made only at the request and with written approval of the appropriate government authority or within guidelines given by governments for this purpose. Such equipment or materials may bear the donating company's name or logo, but should not refer to a proprietary product that is within the scope of this code and should be distributed only through the healthcare system. Article 5 talks about the general public and mothers. There should be no advertising or other form of promotion to the general public of products within the scope of this code. Manufacturers and distributors should not provide directly or indirectly to pregnant women, mothers, or members of their families samples of products within the scope of this code. In conformity with paragraphs 1 and 2, which was read above of this article, there should be no point of sale advertising, giving of samples, or any promotion device to induce sales directly to the customer at the retail level, such as special displays, discount coupons, premium special sales, loss leaders, and tie-in sales for products within the scope of this code. The provision should not restrict the establishment of pricing policies and practices intended to provide products at lower prices on a long-term basis. Manufacturers and distributors should not distribute to pregnant women or mothers of infants and young children any gifts or articles or utensils which may promote the use of breast milk substitutes or bottle feeding. Marketing personnel in their business capacity should not seek direct or indirect contact of any kind with pregnant women or with mothers of infants and young children. Article 6 talks about healthcare systems. The health authorities in member states should take appropriate measures to encourage and protect breastfeeding and promote the principles of this code, and should give appropriate information and advice to healthcare workers in regard to their responsibilities, including the information specified in Article 4.2, and no facility of healthcare should be used for the purpose of promoting infant formula or other products within the scope of this code. This code does not, however, preclude the dissemination of information to the health professionals as provided in Article 7.2. Facilities of healthcare system should not be used for display of products within the scope of this code, for placards or posters concerning such products, or the distribution of material provided by a manufacturer or distributor, or other than that specified in Article 4.3. The use by the healthcare system of professional service representatives, mothercraft nurses, or similar personnel provided or paid by manufacturers or distributors should not be permitted. Feeding with infant formula, whether manufactured or home prepared, should be demonstrated only by healthcare workers or other community workers if necessary, and only to the mothers or family members who need to use it. And the information given should include a clear explanation of hazards of improper use. Donations or low price sales to institutions or organizations of supplies of infant formula or other products within the scope of this code, whether for use in institutions or for distribution outside them, may be made. Such supplies should only be used for distributed for infants, those who have to be fed on breast milk substitutes. If these supplies are not distributed, or if these supplies are distributed for use outside the institutions, this should be only done by the institutions or organizations' consent. Such donations or low price sales should not be used by manufacturers or distributors as a sales inducement. Whereas the donated supplies of infant formula or other products within the scope of this code are distributed outside the institution or organization should take necessary steps to ensure that supplies can be continued as long as the infants concerned need them. Donors as well as institutions or whereas donated supplies of infant formula or other products within the scope of this code are distributed outside an institution, the institution or the organization should take steps to ensure that suppliers can be continued as long as the infants concerned need them. Donors as well as the instructions or organizations concerned should bear in this mind this responsibility. Equipment and materials, in addition to those referred to in Article 4.3, donated to healthcare system, may bear a company name or logo, but should not refer to any proprietary product within the scope of this code. Article 7 talks about healthcare workers. Health workers should encourage and protect breastfeeding, and those who are concerned in particular with material and infant nutrition should make always themselves familiar with their responsibilities under this code, including the information specified in Article 4.2. Information provided by manufacturers and distributors to healthcare professionals regarding products within the scope of the code should be restricted to scientific and factual matters, and such information should not imply or create a belief that the bottle feeding is equivalent or superior to the breastfeeding. No financial or material inducements to promote products within the scope of this code should be offered by manufacturers or distributors to the health workers or members of their families, nor should be accepted by health workers or members of their families. Samples of infant formula or other products within the scope of this code or of equipment of utensils for their preparation or use should not be provided to healthcare workers, except when necessary for the purpose of professional evaluation or research at the institutional level. Health workers should not give samples of infant formula to pregnant women, mothers of infants and young children, or members of their families. So manufacturers and distributors of products within the scope of this code should disclose to the institution to which a recipient health worker is affiliated any contribution made to him or her on his or her behalf for fellowships, study tours, research grants, attendance at professional conferences, or the like. Similar disclosures Article 8 talks about persons employed by manufacturers and distributors in systems of sales, incentives for marketing personnel. The volume of sales of products within the scope of the code should not be included in the calculation of bonus, nor should quotas be set for sales of these products. This should not be understood to prevent the payment of bonus based on overall sales by a company of other products marketed by it. Personnel employed in marketing products with the scope of this code should not, as part of their job responsibilities, perform educational functions in relation to the pregnant women or mothers of their infants and youth children. They should not be understood as preventing such personnel from being used for other functions such as the healthcare system, Article 9 talks about labels should be designed to provide necessary information about the appropriate use of the product and so as not to discourage breastfeeding. Manufacturers and distributors of the infant formula should ensure that each container has a clear, conspicuous, and easily readable and understandable message printed on it or on a label which cannot readily become separated from it in an appropriate language, which includes all of the following points. The words important notice or their equivalent, a statement of superiority of breastfeeding, a statement that the product should be used only on the advice of health worker as to need for its use and proper method. Food products within the scope of this code marketed for infant feeding, which do not meet all the requirements of an infant formula, but which can be modified to do so, should carry on a label with a warning that the unmodified product should not be sole source of nourishment of an infant. The quality is an essential element for the protection of health of infants and therefore should be of highly recognized standards. Food products with scope of this code when sold or otherwise distributed meet applicable standards recommended by Codex Alimentarius Commission and also the Codex Code of Hygiene Practice for Foods for Infants and Children. Article 11 talks about implementation and monitoring. Government should take action to give effect to the principles and aims of this code as appropriate to their social legislative framework, including adoption of natural legislation, regulations, or other suitable means. For this purpose, government should seek, when necessary, monitoring the application of this code lies within governments acting individually and collectively throughout through the World Health Organization as provided in the paragraph 6 and 7 of this article. The manufacturers and distributors of products within the scope of this code and appropriate non-governmental organizations, professional groups, and consumer organizations should collaborate with governments to this end. Non-governmental organizations, professional groups, institutions, and individuals concerned should have the responsibility of drawing the attention of manufacturers or distributors to achieve activities which are incompatible with the principles and aims of code of, so that appropriate action can be taken. The appropriate government authorities should also be formed. Manufacturers and primary distribution of products within the scope of this code should apprise each other or each member of their member market team personnel to the code and their responsibility under it. And it includes various other resolutions. And we also have the netcode toolkit monitoring the marketing of breast milk substitutes, protocol for periodic assessments. Now let's look at biochemistry of breast milk. What actually breast milk consists of? And anyone, if you know, you can share in chat box. What is the composition of breast milk? Okay, we'll go through it. No need to worry if you don't know. It is not required that we know everything. That is why we keep learning constantly. So we will look at the biochemistry of breast milk and also the components of breast milk. So we have seen in the last 3 days why breastfeeding was important and how breastfeeding can help reduce the inequalities in health and promote health and economic benefits from increasing breastfeeding rates. And we also briefly looked at various reasons why mothers do not breastfeed, despite all the evidence from the research demonstrating the benefits. And we also looked at various changes that are required in policy to support global increase in breastfeeding rates by governments through various laws and acts and policies and programs. So it is critical that development actors confront the reality that for almost all mothers, an estimated 140 million women give birth every year, breastfeeding is not always a choice. Depending on the severity of the barriers, a mother may be so constrained by forces beyond her control, like lack of education, lack of family support, the need to earn income, and she cannot exercise a preference to breastfeed. For many tens of millions of mothers, breastfeeding is not possible in environments in which they live. For these women, reducing or removing the external constraints is what will untimely or ultimately timely lead to sustained increases in breastfeeding. Women facing the most significant barriers to breastfeeding are also most likely to live in communities where the costs of breastfeeding fall mostly heavily on children. There are populations where very low breastfeeding rates coexist with very high rates of newborn and child sickness and death. Empowering mothers in these high-risk environments to exercise a real choice to breastfeeding in supportive homes, workplaces, and public spaces should be primary focus of development efforts to increase breastfeeding rates. So there are various benefits of breast milk or breastfeeding that has become extremely well known and extensively promoted. There is also consensus among the global health community that breast milk confers its powerful protective properties on children by providing all the nutrients, vitamins, and minerals children need in the first 6 months of life, alongside antibodies that combat infectious diseases, especially diarrhea and pneumonia, and enzymes for optimal digestion. There is also now widespread acceptance that the health benefits of breastfeeding continue well into the early childhood, after 6 months and potential beyond. The benefits of breastfeeding for women include reduced risk of pregnancy and potentially lower lifetime risks of certain cancers, obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Although breastfeeding is one of the few health interventions where the gaps in coverage between high and low income households are narrow in low income countries, early and exclusive breastfeeding rates among poor families remain very low. If we see the breastfeeding rates in countries with the highest newborn and child deaths, as per 2015 statistics, in India, which is the highest in the number of newborn deaths in between 0 to 1 month, in 2015 was 6,96,000 newborns have died within 1 month, and the number of child deaths in between 0 to 5 years, as per 2015 statistics in India, was 1 lakh 12 lakhs 1,000, and early breastfeeding among these in India, that is the initiation of breastfeeding within 1 hour, is only 41%. That's why we see a lot of deaths happening and lot of diseases, other factors. And exclusive breastfeeding between 0 to 6 months is also only 62%. As per the UNICEF 2015 and World Bank as per 2015 statistics and reports. Now, we also have seen Investments in breastfeeding are highly cost effective. And there are few barriers to breastfeeding. Poor breastfeeding performance in a majority of countries coexist with generally high levels of awareness about the benefits of breastfeeding, especially among mothers. Surveys repeatedly show that women know breast is best and a self-report of strong preference to be breastfed. The wide gaps between women preferences to breastfeed and breastfeeding rates suggest that the existence of significant no-do gap and imply the women face steep barriers to breastfeeding in most countries. Understanding the nature of these barriers, how they operate in specific contexts, and how to neutralize them is one of the most crucial critical challenges in child health and development. In a survey, a range of barriers from perceived breast milk insufficiency to pain and discomfort to transition to work and fear of breastfeeding in public were cited. A 2014 nine-country study by Lancino found that most of the 13,000 mothers surveyed wanted to breastfeed exclusively but did not, citing pain and discomfort, lack of time, the difficulty of pumping at work, and public embarrassment as major reasons. In addition, studies from several low-income countries point to cultural beliefs about the importance of non-breast milk feeding for spiritual protection and other purposes as significant barriers to exclusive breastfeeding. And many non-survey based studies postulate other barriers to breastfeeding that focus on marketing and availability of breast milk substitutes, especially infant formula. And despite a plethora of policy reports advocating benefits of breastfeeding and several special initiatives launched since Innocenti Declaration on the protection, promotion, and support of breastfeeding was signed by 30 governments and several UN agencies in 1990, few programs have systematically targeted the range of breastfeeding barriers faced by women. This is especially so in populations where breastfeeding could contribute significantly to newborn and child survival. An independent analysis conducted for UNICEF culminated into a landmark report, Breastfeeding on the Worldwide Agenda, that categorized breastfeeding landscape as policy rich and implementation poor and called for urgent action to transfer the token attention breastfeeding often receives into a non-negotiable commitment to deliver a comprehensive package of health and nutrition for interventions at a scale. Identifying compelling investment opportunities with potential to increase early and exclusive breastfeeding rates in countries where gains will directly translate into newborn and child survival, reduced healthcare costs, and economic gains is now urgent priority. The most promising solutions will be able to neutralize one or more barriers to breastfeeding and lower the rising roots women face as countries develop. The most investment-worthy innovations will have a proven capacity to increase breastfeeding initiation within an hour for both home and hospital births, ensure that even the most vulnerable newborns have access to human milk, improve women's self-confidence about the adequacy of their milk supplies, reduce breastfeeding pain and discomfort and improving technique, reduce breastfeeding time constraints, especially by extending paid maternal leave, and create breastfeeding friendly workplaces, homes, and public spaces. And we have also seen how breastfeeding are contributing to the sustainable development goals. Breast milk provides all the nutrition infants needs for the first 6 months of life, significantly reducing the risk of sickness and death in infancy and contributing to healthy development well into early childhood and beyond. And breastfeeding is one of the most under-leveraged equity strategies in child health. No other single health intervention has the potential to reduce the inequalities in health, to prevent newborn and child deaths at a scale of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is a cost-effective investment in child and health development, and an estimated cost of US dollars 175 per life saved. Promotion of breastfeeding compares favorably with other nutritional intervention packages. There is a significant no-do gap in the breastfeeding. Women seem to be well aware of the benefits of breastfeeding, but often face significant barriers such as perceived breast milk insufficiency, pain and discomfort, transition to work, and fear of breastfeeding in public. To achieve an increase in breastfeeding rates, the focus of breastfeeding promotion needs to shift from isolated efforts to the multi-country, multi-stakeholder partnerships. Currently, global targets for the breastfeeding rates do not match current global targets for breastfeeding rates do not match the ambition of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah, so we will look at the components of milk. If we see, there are different components in the milk, especially human milk. So there is no other period of time in human life when the quantity and quality of nutritional supply are of greater importance than during the first months after birth. So this is due to extremely rapid growth of infants who normally double their birth weight in 4 to 5 months and triple it in the first year. Such a growth rate demands a very high requirement of energy and nutrients per kilogram of body weight. The capacity to compensate for a diet that is insufficient in quantity or inadequate in nutritional value is limited. Body serves Body reserves of nutrients are very restricted, and particularly during the first months of life. Some functions are not fully developed, such as nutrient absorption, metabolism, and renal conservation. In addition to this fast rate of body mass gain, there is a rapid development and differentiation of tissues and organs. During this period of development, developmental plasticity, environmental cues such as nutrition and metabolism have modifying effects on growth, development, and long-term function and health. An increasing body of evidence indicates that nutrition, particularly during the first 2 years of life, has marked impact on later physiology, health, and disease risks. This is commonly referred to as metabolic programming of lifelong health and disease of the developmental origins of adult health. So breastfeeding is a natural form of infant feeding that is universally recommended. The composition of human milk is believed to have developed during a very long evolutionary process to match the needs of both lactating lactating women and their infants optimally. Lactation and milk feeding in mammalian species is believed to have evolved over a period of about 250 to 300 million years and beyond, and to have originated from synapsid animals that provided fluid from cutaneous glands to protect their parchment-shelled eggs from desiccation. These ancestral cutaneous glands are thought to have evolved in combining features of skin glands into new functional entities. Gland secretions were then provided with antimicrobial properties to protect eggs and hatchlings from infection, and organic components to supplement offspring nutrition. The immune properties of milk from various mammalian species show wide variation in anti-inflammatory and immunomodulating agents, including immunoglobulins, iron-binding proteins, lysozyme, oligosaccharides, leukocytes, and others. This variability appears to compensate for differences in developmental delays in early postnatal production of antimicrobial factors among species. Moreover, The composition and concentrations of different immunological agents in mammalian milks relate to the differences in placental type and function, lactation pattern, and environments, and also follow different evolutionary strategies. Similarly, the evolutionary development of highly nutritious milk or milks has led to diverse variation in mammary gland anatomy, milk output, length of lactation, and nutrient content, and in relative contribution of milk feeding of the offspring's total nutrient supply during their initial growth period. For example, the wide interspecies variation in milk protein content, a key driver of offspring, is closely related to the offspring growth velocity. The relatively low protein concentration in human milk is an adaptation to the lower needs of human infants who have slower weight gain rates compared to, for example, cows or kittens. Moreover, the protein supply in human milk falls substantially with increasing duration of lactation. The protein intake per kilogram body weight of a breastfed infant at 6 months presents only 55% of the intake after birth. So underlying evolutionary adaptation of lactation to the needs of the species, this change is in accordance with the decrease in protein requirement with increasing postnatal age, which is a consequence of slowing of infant growth rate. Recent genome studies provide support for the hypothesis that during the evolution of lactation, the maternal energy cost of breastfeeding have been limited. While aiming to maximize offspring survival, in effect, this would also have promoted survival of maternal offspring pairs and therefore survival of the species. The genome analysis of those with nutritional or immunological characteristics, this leads to speculation that evolutionary selection, especially of these genes, occurred in response to different environmental and nutritional needs and to infectious challenges. Interestingly, most conserved genes are those for proteins of the milk fat globule membrane, suggesting they may have a central biological role. So, if we see, there are anti-infectious and anti-inflammatory components in the human milk and various other components like cellular compounds in the breast milk, neutrophil, granulocyte, macrophages, lymphocytes, mammary gland, epithelial cell membranes, milk fat, globule membranes, and humoral and other components like immunoglobulins, SLGA, IgG, IgM, IgD, haptocorin, complement and complement receptors, osteopontin, toll-like receptors, fibronectin, soluble CD14, lactoperoxidase, beta defensin 1, human milk oligo and polysaccharides and conjugates, cytokines, example IL-10, TBF beta, monoglycerides and non-esterified fatty acids, ENF alpha and IL-6 receptors, IL-1 receptor antagonist, nucleotides, K-casein, alpha-lactalbumin, mucins, lysozyme, lactoferrin, lactoferrin, lactoferricin B and H. These are various components that are found in the breast milk. which are anti-infectious, anti-inflammatory components, and many more components. We have just listed few, but see how many components are there which are very much beneficial for the human growth and development. And if we look at various mammals species, milk composition, what milk contains. So milk composition, that is percentage of weight among different mammal species. If we take among 9 species like humans, cows, buffaloes, sheep, 87.7% of water in human milk, 1.8% weight of protein, 3.6% of fat, 6.8% of lactose, 0.1% ash in human milk. If we take cow milk, 86.86% of water, 3.4% of protein, 4.6% of fat, 4.9% of lactose, 0.7% of ash. In buffalo, 84.2% of water, 3.9% of protein, 6.6% of fat, 5.2% lactose, 0.8% ash. In sheep, 79.4%, 3 of water, 1.3% of protein, 4.8% of fat, 3.4% of lactose, 0.9%, 8.6% of fat, 4.3% of lactose, 1.1% of ash. See here, we can see human milk contains the highest percentage of water, because water is essential for everyone, all the human beings and also animals. And body is composed of more than 70 to 85% of water. Even planet is also consists of more than 70% of water. So that's why water is crucial for everyone. So human milk contains 87.7% of water, which meets all the water requirements for the baby infant. And if we look at the protein requirements, so 1.8% of protein is in human milk, which is adequate for the infant. When we look at the cow or buffalo, in cows, it is closer to human milk. Cow milk is closer to human milk, and buffalo milk is next to cow milk. The difference lies in the protein and fat content and lactose content. Of course, even water content is less in buffalo milk. That's why the most nearest human milk is cow milk. That's why even cow has many manifold benefits. And cow is treated as mother because, it is treated as a mother because we drink milk, everyone, irrespective of any gender, religion, caste, creed, culture, tradition. Every infant is provided with milk, especially when the infant is provided with cow milk. It provides the adequate nutrition that is provided by the human milk as a supplement after 6 months. Now, we shall look into infant mortality, that is deaths of infants up to the age of 10 months in 1885 in breastfed and infant-fed animal milks. This is from the history, I mean, from long back, where we are just seeing where earlier also what happened to the infants who were breastfed and who were fed with animal milk. So the infant mortality, that is deaths of infants in 1,000 infants at age 0, that is within 1 month, there were only 196 deaths occurred. Those were breastfed. Of course, there are also various other factors, but as we have seen, breast milk acts in good interest of the mother and child. Whereas 1,028 children out of 1,000 children died, those who were fed with animal milk. Similarly, the age of 1 month, 76 children died who were on breast milk, but 580 children, infants, died who were fed with animal milk. So you can see the very difference, even in the child of 2 months, 64 deaths only happened for those who are breastfed, but 544 deaths occurred who were fed with animal milk. Again, 3 months of age, 58 deaths occurred among breastfed. Among animal feed, there are 478 deaths occur. And similarly, the mortality rate is 7.3 when it is breastfed. There is 7% chances of death, only 7.3 chances of death when the mother feeds her baby through breastfeeding. But there are chances of 46.4% of death, that is mortality, the deaths are occurred. In fact, it's not the chances, but the number of children that has died was 46.4% when they were fed, when they were not breastfed and they were fed by animal milk. So even in past also, history also, you can see how the breastfeeding influence the growth and development and also mortality rate of infants. So now we will look into the major macronutrients or the major molecules in human milk and their functions. So if we look at major macronutrients in human milk and various functions, we'll come to know that how crucial is the breast milk for the infants. If you look at the fat in general, fat is the greatest source of energy. 50 to 60% caloric intake, highly variable component, and transfer of fat soluble vitamins, and some fatty acids have antimicrobial properties. This is in general, which is present in human milk in the form of, the macronutrients, that is fat. There are short chain fatty acids, which are sources of energy, maturation of gastrointestinal tract. And medium chain fatty acids are sources of energy and help in peripheral glucose utilization and maturization of gastrointestinal tract. And long chain fatty acids are the sources of energy and helps in infant visual and neural development. And they are antiviral and anti-protozoal effects and modulate the immune system. The sphingomyelins in milk fat globule membrane helps in central nervous system myelination, improved neurobehavioral and visual development of low birth weight infants. So when we look at the protein, casein contains amino acids which are nutritive, main sources of calcium and phosphorus, and softer curds resulting in more rapid gastric transit compared to formula. And peptides derived from the digestion of casein, antimicrobial, immunomodulatory, antithrombotic, antihypertensive, and opioid effects. These are the functions for peptides. And whey, lactoferrin binds iron, protects against iron-dependent pathogens. Its byproduct lactoferrin has direct antimicrobial effects. Lysozyme has the functions of bacteriostatic and bactericidal properties, supports growth of infant commensal bacteria, supports infant growth, particularly those preterm. Secretory IgA, antipathogenic effect, neutralizes toxins and viruses. Alpha lactalbumin has the functions of lactose synthesis, binds zinc and calcium, matches amino acid requirements of the infant, and it provides immune protection, gut maturation and development. Bile salt stimulated lipase helps in digestion of fat and infant growth. Mucins inhibit pathogen binding. Other proteins like osteopontin helps in gut barrier function, immune responses. Amylase helps in digestion of oligo and polysaccharides and also has antibacterial functions. Haptocorin helps in absorption of vitamin B12 and has antimicrobial activity. Cytokines, anti-inflammatory effect, reduces the severity of infections. Recently has been linked to infant body composition. And growth factors stimulate cellular growth, involved in infant intestinal growth, regulation of development of multiple organs, and anti-inflammatory properties. Carbohydrates, the form of lactose, 30 to 40% of total energy is provided. Calcium helps in calcium absorption, prebiotic for gut colonization. Human milk, oligosaccharides, protects from infection and antimicrobial and anti-adhesive functions and alters host cell responses, infant brain development, prebiotic for gut colonization. So the fat content of human milk contributes to a significant portion of the caloric intake of the term infant, 50 to 60%. Protein levels in human milk are relatively low, approximately 1% on average, but they are highly bioavailable and specific to the human infant and mainly produced by lactocytes. Protein content is higher after birth and declining relatively to constant levels in mature milk. Protein in human milk accounts for 5% of the infant's energy, which satisfies 5.6 percentage protein energy, which means protein requirement for 6-month-old infants. So infants do not therefore require extra protein. So both the quality and quantity of protein consumed in the first 2 years of the life impacts on the infant growth, neurodevelopment, and long-term health. That's why this is very important. The nitrogen content of human milk consists of protein approximately 75% and non-protein approximately 25% components. Non-protein nitrogen consists of molecules such as free amino acids, peptides, creatine, creatinine, nucleic acids, nucleotides, uric acid, ammonia, ammonia sugars, polyamines, and carnitine. These are functional in infant, having effects on growth and development, as well as providing protection. For example, nutritionally, nucleotides and nucleosides are involved in rapid growth, as in the preterm infant. Gut and microbiota development and immune function. Carnitine and taurine are essential for fatty acid metabolism. Carnitine is involved in lipolysis, ketogenesis, and thermogenesis, while taurine plays a role in fat absorption, bile acid secretion, and hepatic and retinal function. In immunity, a number of proteins and products of digestion provide protection against pathogenic bacteria and viruses and support development of the immune system. Typically, many of these components have multiple functions. Casein are major proteins in mammalian milk and account for 13% of the total protein. Resume in a minute. Caseins are major proteins in mammalian milk and account for 13% of the total protein. The high levels of caseins in bovine milk give it Its characteristic white appearance, while human milk has a pale blue appearance because of its low casein content. Caseins are predominantly nutritive, providing the infant with essential amino acids and minerals. The casein micelle is the main source of calcium and phosphorus and is necessary for the infant bone mineralization. The enzyme protease in the breast and infant stomach breaks down casein into smaller peptides that have multiple effects, including antimicrobial, immunomodularity, antithrombotic, antihypertensive, and opioid effects. The low casein content of human milk is also responsible for the slower growth rate of human infants compared to other mammalian offsprings. Casein is only mildly digested in the stomach. Caseins are then precipitated and more slowly digested than whey proteins. Since the casein level is lower in human milk compared to cow's milk, it forms a softer curd in the stomach that is more easily digestible. So it therefore passes through the stomach faster than formula, facilitating frequent breastfeeding. The casein concentration of cow's milk is 10 times more greater than that of human milk. Thus, the addition of whey protein to bovine-based formula is necessary to offset some of the high casein effects, such as formation of hard curds in the infant stomach. Lysozyme is one of the three major proteins that dominate the whey fraction of milk. It has bacteriostatic and bactericidal properties, and its functions include breakdown of the outer cell wall of gram-positive bacteria, inactivation of gram-negative bacteria in the presence of lactoferrin, inhibition of amoeba, and anti-HIV activity. Interestingly, human milk lysosome appears to support resident commercial bifidobacteria in the milk, but inhibit growth of adult-like strains of bifidobacteria. There is also evidence that lysosome adds to feeds improves growth in piglets, and that there is also positive association between lysosome concentrations in human milk and the growth of preterm infants. With the resurgence of pasteurized human donor milk as an alternative to preterm formula, when mother's own milk is not available, the reduction in concentration of lysosome and the bile stimulated lipase by Holder heat pasteurization may impact preterm infant growth. Recently, UVC pasteurization has been shown to reduce the loss of bioactivity and increase retention of proteins, that is lysosome, lactoferrin, and SLGA, making it an attractive alternative method to retain donor milk quality. Alpha-lactalbumin comprises 10 to 20% of the total human milk protein. It is involved in lactose synthesis and also binds zinc and calcium, while zinc and iron absorption improved in a monokese fed formula supplemented with bovine alpha-lactalbumin. No studies have assessed mineral absorption in breastfed infants by that time, but further, the amino acid composition of human milk, alpha-lactalbumin, matches the infant's amino acid requirements. So alpha-lactalbumin has been shown to protect the infant against several microbes such as Escherichia, pneumonia, Staphylococcus, and epidermis. However, its antimicrobial activity has not been intensely studied. Secretory immunoglobulin A in short known as SLGA, is the most abundant immunoglobulin in human milk, contributing to 25% of the total protein content. And it is present in greater concentration in colostrum, that is 7 to 8 grams per liter, decreasing to lower levels 1.0 to 2.0 grams per liter later in lactation. It provides support for the infant as their immune system matures and become more functional. Bile salt stipulated lipase is 1 to 2% of total milk protein, plays an important role in digestion of dietary fats. It is present in the bovine milk, but absent in the infant formula due to manufacturing process. In the intestinal lumen, BSSL is activated by bile salts, allowing it to hydrolyze lipid substrates such as short and long chain triacylglycerides. Pasteurization of human milk inactivates BSSL and is thought to reduce fat absorption in the preterm infants. So where pasteurization is required, when the milk is taken from other mother, donor mother, UVC pasteurization of human milk has been shown to preserve most of the BSSL activity, potentially improving fat absorption in the preterm infant, although this has not been tested clinically. Mucin, milk fat globule membrane, protects including lactoferrin, butyrophilin, xanthine oxidase, and mucins. Few mucins have been studied. Mucin 1 appears to inhibit pathogen binding to the host cell surface and specifically binds to rotaviruses. Osteopontin levels are higher in human milk than in bovine milk, ratio approximately 10:1. It has important functions in the development of gut barrier and modulates growth factor, TGF, beta 1, and pro-inflammatory cytokines in mice with induced colitis, thus reducing inflammation. There is evidence that both human and bovine osteopontin affect gene expression in the CSCO2 human intensity cell line, albeit different. Alpha amylase is present in higher concentrations in human milk than in duodenal fluid, and its activity is highest in colostrum when salivary and pancreatic alpha amylase activities are low and decreases with established lactation days 15 to 90. Alpha amylase is active at low pH, equivalent to that is infant stomach, and there is therefore resistant to degradation. It plays a role in digestion of polysaccharides and may exert antibacterial functions by breaking down polysaccharides into bacterial cell walls. Haptocorin binds the most of the vitamin B12 in human milk. Evidence suggests that haptocorin resists digestion and it is taken up by human intestinal cells through binding of the haptocorin to the intestinal brush border. As such, the infant absorbs vitamin 12 early in life. In addition, haptocorin has exhibited antimicrobial activity. Cytokines in human milk, of which 80 have been measured, possess immunomodulatory functions. They include interleukin, IL-1 beta, IL-6, IL-8, IL-10, tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF alpha, transforming growth factor beta, TGF beta, and interferon gamma, IFN gamma, and many cytokines are anti-inflammatory and likely decrease infection severity in breastfed infants. Increasingly, certain cytokines, IL-6 and TNF-alpha has been linked to infant body composition with higher IL-6 concentrations associated with less body fat gain, percentage body fat and fat mass, and TNF-alpha associated with less lean mass. And growth factors present in human milk include epidermal growth factor, EGF, and insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1, IGF-2, insulin, and relaxin. Growth factors stimulate cellular growth, and those aforementioned have been implicated in the stimulation and regulation of infant intestinal growth. EGF has multiple functions, including regulation of mammary, hepatic, pancreatic, and lung development. TGF-beta is higher in colostrum than mature milk. However, lower levels have been found in milk of preterm mothers whose infants has necrotizing enterocolitis, as this was shown in the study of small sample size. This finding remains to be confirmed. Nevertheless, it is feasible that TGF-beta has such a clinical effect because the severity of necrotizing enterocolitis can be reduced by enteral administration of TGF-beta. This effect has been attributed to the anti-inflammatory effects of this molecule. And carbohydrates. Lactose is the main carbohydrate in human milk, comprising 30 to 40% of the total energy and has a role in calcium absorption. Lactose concentrations increase from 19 grams per liter in colostrum to 54 grams per liter at the initiation of lactation. Lactose is broken down by the enzyme lactase into monosaccharides, glucose, and galactose. Galactose is then converted to glucose in the liver. Both galactose and glucose provide fuel for the brain, with galactose being implicated in rapid brain development. Lactose, along with HMOs, assist colonization of the infant gut. Human milk oligosaccharides, in short known as HMOs, are the third most prevalent milk component. Highest concentrations are found in colostrum. Colostrum is the first milk, 20 to 25 grams per liter, and compared to the mature milk, that is 5 to 20 grams per liter. More than 200 HMOs exist in HM, with types varying from 23 to 130 among women. HMO composition is further classified into secretors and non-secretors, and these are either Lewis positive or Lewis negative. HMOs are not readily digested in the stomach, with only a small amount observed. Thus, they do not contribute greatly to infant nutrition, but rather have a wide variety of protective functions. However, there is an evidence suggests that the HMO composition of milk may have a role in infant growth and body composition in the very first 6 months of the life. Further, HMOs are major nutrients for infant brain development, and sialic acid concentrations are higher in breastfed infants' brains rather than in formula-fed infants. HMOs have an anti-adhesive, antimicrobial action which provides protection from pathogenic diarrhea-causing organisms such as E. coli, Campylobacter jejuni, norovirus, and rotavirus. The protective factors are dose-dependent, with more HMOs conferring a lower risk of diarrheal disease. HMOs are also associated with reduced HIV transmission, a reduced risk of respiratory and urinary tract infections, and some protection from specific protozoa such as Entomoeba histolytica through alteration in the intestinal cell gene expression. Additionally, HMOs has prebiotic effects, providing metabolic substrates for the growth of bacteria such as bifidobacteria and lactobacilli. Human milk provides a full component of both water and fat-soluble vitamins and minerals for the infant. The vitamin content of the human milk is influenced by maternal vitamin status, particularly for those that are water-soluble. It is important that thiamine, B1, riboflavin, B2, vitamins B6 and B12, vitamin A, iron, and iodine are consumed in sufficient amounts by the mother to ensure satisfactory levels are delivered via milk to the infant. In contrast, levels of total calcium is around 250 milligrams per liter, phosphate 150 milligrams per liter in human milk are independent of material diet or maternal diet. Vitamin D is produced by skin when exposed to ultraviolet rays. It is critical to bone health as it involved in the regulation of calcium and phosphorus absorption by the infant. It is also important in innate and adaptive immune system health. HM concentrations, that is human milk concentrations of vitamin D, that is 25 hydroxy vitamin D, are linked to maternal serum concentrations with low vitamin D levels in milk associated with low levels in maternal serum concentrations. Because of the increased risk of skin cancer, there is concern that precautions taken against excess exposure of sunlight has resulted in an increase in cases of maternal vitamin D deficiency. This is reflected in the increased incidence of rickets, where maternal vitamin D deficiency is suspected. The vitamin D supplementations have been shown to directly increase both human milk vitamin D concentration and also infant 25 hydroxy vitamin D status. So regardless, the American Academy of Pediatrics currently recommends that breastfed infants can be supplemented with 400 IU per day of oral vitamin D from birth. The infant readily absorbs iron in human milk and therefore supplementation is not generally required in the first 6 months. Exceptions include infants born with low iron stores, such as low birth weight infants and infants of mothers with diabetes. Supplementation of breastfed infants 1 to 6 months of age with 7.5 milligrams per day of the elemental iron ferrous sulfate has been found to increase both hemoglobin concentration and mean corpuscular volume compared with non-supplemented breastfed infants. Supplementation also appears to improve infant visual acuity and mental and psychomotor neural development. American Academy of Pediatrics to recommend 1 milligram per kg per day oral iron supplementation of exclusively breastfed term infants and infants receiving more than half of their daily feeds as breast milk from 4 months of age. Human milk contains an extensive array of trace elements like copper, zinc, barium, cadmium, cesium, cobalt, cerium, lanthanum, manganese, nickel, lead, rubidium, tin, strontium, etc., that are easily absorbed by the infant. Human milk concentrations of these traces are influenced by the maternal diet, although no global reference values are for levels in human milk exist. Zinc deficiency is not uncommon, with half of all zinc deficient infants being less than 5 years of age. Zinc deficiency is indicated by symptoms including growth retardation, reduced immune function, and GI effects such as diarrhea, rapid growth and tissue synthesis requires high levels of zinc. Thus, infants at particularly risk of zinc deficiency are those who are premature, of low birth weight, or on a combination diet of human milk and plant-based foods of low zinc content. Human milk zinc levels are not influenced by maternal diet, and supplementation is generally recommended only if complementary foods are low in zinc or in poor resource settings. See how many benefits are there by feeding breast milk to the infant. But undermining all these benefits, unfortunately, mothers, parents, families are not encouraging breastfeeding. It is a God gift, it is a mother gift, it is a boon for the child for his entire lifetime, which a happily breastfed baby is more immune to any diseases, illness, and infections for the next 50 to 60 years or for the entire lifetime. Without understanding this, if we, for the temporary benefits or comfort, we are depriving the infant of breast milk, which is affecting the infant for the entire life. So how much as a mother who puts her entire life on the infant, we have to rethink ourselves whether we deprive the infant the benefits of breast milk, which is enormous and which has no value. And there are also various other factors, components that we will look at tomorrow. There are also stem cells in breast milk, protective cells in breast milk, which helps in regenerating the cells, which helps the infant to recover and rebuild due to various infections or accidents and various other hazards. So with this, we shall conclude for the day. And thank you everyone for attending today's 4th day of international seminar on breastfeeding. So we thank you once again. We request everyone before leaving, quickly fill the feedback form, which is shared in the form of polls. It is mandatory. So see you all tomorrow at the same time with the same link at 6 o'clock for the 5th day of international seminar. Those who are interested to make presentations, you can register as a presenter and share all the details. So see you all tomorrow. Take care. Good night. Before leaving, do not forget to provide your feedback. It is mandatory. And those who have not registered till now can register. The registration link has been already shared in the chat box and also available on the website. So take care. Good night.